Why do they call you Little Blue? Playing in his bath as some of us do. He bit his mummy's fountain pen and broke it in two. The ink it squirted in the water, wow. His mummy has a blue boy now. They scrubbed and rubbed, he cried and kicked up a din. The more they washed it off, the more it washed in. He cried, oh mummy, mummy, what shall I do? I'll have to stay a little blue.
One day, a crowded school notice board told Little Blue and his friends that it was going to be a very busy week. Wednesday, the return football match with Northfield. Thursday, the singing competition. And Friday, Prize Giving Day. Mrs. Jellybun was delighted when Little Blue took home her invitation. The headmistress and staff of Haythorne School have great pleasure in inviting Mrs. Jellybun. Oh, what shall I wear, she cried, which mothers never fail to do when they're invited to anything, anywhere. Little Blue was always a bit worried when his mother came to a school happening. He remembered last sports day when she turned up wearing that green turban, which Geoffrey West said looked just like one of his father's prize cabbages. Geoffrey West isn't a nice boy. Will you be coming then, Mummy? Asked Little Blue uneasily. Coming? Of course I'm coming, boy, to see you get your prize. What prize, Mummy? The singing prize, of course. You won it last year, didn't you? Now, as a matter of fact, Little Blue has a remarkable voice. Very clear, very, very true. Listen. That wasn't Little Blue singing, but another boy, who was a very fine singer in his time. Little Blue's voice is so like it you can hardly tell the difference, except that Little Blue can sing much, much louder. Well, next day Mrs. Jellybun went along to Emily Jane's, a very trendy shop in South Street, to get herself something really nice to wear. She had a bit put by, and what she'd saved from her holiday spending money. She looked in the window. That's a nice dress, she thought. Is it a bit young for me? Should I wear something very, very simple, but very good, like Her Majesty the Queen does? Oh, well, she went inside. The young lady in the shop was doing her nails with a long file, so Mrs. Jellybun waited politely, and then she gave a little and then she said, good morning. And presently the young lady said, can I help you? Mrs. Jellybun said, I like the dress you have in the window. Perhaps I could try it on. The young lady looked up and said, it wouldn't fit you, would it? We never get asked for anything your size, do we? You're being asked now, aren't you? Snapped Mrs. Jellybun, and she stomped out of the shop, boiling with anger. Outside the shop, whom should she bump into but Miss Gusset, little dressmaker who lived next door. Oh, why didn't I go to her at first, thought Mrs. Jellybun. Mrs. Gusset, I have an order for you, but only if you can copy that dress in the window by Friday. Miss Gusset was thrilled. In no time at all, they were in her front room, and she was running her tape measure over Mrs. Jellybun. On the way home, they bought some lovely bright material. But at Haythorne School, Miss Merriweather was very worried. It was the return match with Northfield that afternoon. You see, in the last match, Little Blue had kicked so hard he burst one ball, and they never found the one he kicked over the church. There was only one ball left. Supposing Little Blue finished that off in the first few minutes, the game would have to be abandoned. And then, suddenly, a wonderful thing happened. There was Little Blue standing quietly beside her. Miss Merriweather, I think it would be better if I didn't play this afternoon. Don't you feel very well, Little Blue? Oh, I'm all right, miss, but I know we've only got one ball left, and I might bust it. Burst it, Little Blue. Yes, miss. You see, my feet are very hard and strong, and though you tell me not to kick hard, when the ball comes my way, I just lose my head and wham! I've busted. I mean burst it. Let Kipper Guppy play instead of me, miss. There were tears of pride in Miss Merriweather's eyes as she rose and put her hand on Little Blue's head. Little Blue, she said, I'm so terribly proud of you. There are times when I get dispirited, but once in a while, to realize I have trained a sportsman like you makes me feel my job is really rewarding. Thank you, Little Blue. So that afternoon, Little Blue was cheerleader, racing up and down the touchline, yelling and shouting and urging his team on to victory in that loud, clear voice of his. And for the second time, Haythorne won. The score was 1-0, in spite of the fact that Geoffrey West was sent off the field for fouling. Kipper Guppy scored a brilliant goal in the last minute of the game after 11 minutes extra time. That evening, there was a fut-fut-fut noise at Meadow Cottages, and who should it be but Miss Merriweather and the gentleman she is going to marry on their Japonica cycles. The gentleman's name is Mr. Gittings, and he teaches woodwork at the technical school. Miss Merriweather said, We had to call on you, Mrs. Jellybun, and tell you how splendid Little Blue has been today. Mrs. Jellybun said quickly, Go out into the kitchen, boy, and get our guests some lemonade. She didn't want Little Blue to hear all this praise about himself, and she smiled at Miss Merriweather and said, Oh, he can be quite a thoughtful boy at times. So you are getting married, Miss Merriweather. When is the happy day? As they were getting on to their japonicas to go, Miss Merriweather said, We'll see what prize giving, won't we, Mrs. Jellybun? Ha! We know who's going to win the singing prize, don't we? Eh, Little Blue? And fut-fut-fut, they were gone. Well, you may remember that this was Wednesday, and tomorrow, Thursday, was the singing competition, which took place in the school hall. Everyone knew Little Blue was going to win. He's very popular, and everyone got ready to applaud when his turn came. He stood up on the platform, and the teacher played the beginning notes. Little Blue opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Everyone was horrified. Miss Merriweather rushed up with a glass of water. Drink this. So Little Blue tried again, and this time he did manage a croaking sound, but it sounded like a road drill. And that was that. He climbed off the platform and sat down. You see, it was all that yelling and screaming he'd been doing at the football match. He'd cheered himself hoarse, and now his voice was gone altogether. To make matters worse, Mrs. Chalk, the head mistress, much against her will, had to give the prize to Geoffrey West, who has one of those soppy, sickly, sentimental voices, though he does manage to sing in tune. But next day, when she went to the prize giving, Little Blue's mummy held her head up high, because she knew that her child had done the honourable thing, and that is more important than winning prizes. She even said to Mrs. West, Congratulations, Mrs. West, on your Geoffrey winning the singing prize. And she swept on into the hall in her new dress, which Miss Gusset had finished in the nick of time. Little Blue sat there next to her, hanging his head. He listened to the names of the prize winners being read out, and when it came to Geoffrey West's name, his mummy gave him a big nudge so that he remembered to clap and give a weak little smile. Then, at the end of it all, Mrs. Chalk said, There is a special prize this year which does not appear on your programmes. It's been presented by a lady who does not wish her name mentioned. This cup, which is awarded to the best sportsman of the year, goes to Little Blue Jellybun. Everybody yelled and screamed their applause. Mrs. Jellybun pushed her boy forward, and he stumbled up onto the platform and received his prize. The The prize winners and their parents had a lovely tea afterwards. I expect you'd like to know what it was. Apricot jam sandwiches, cake, 2 kinds, pink and white ice cream, and an apple and an orange or a banana to take home. You see, quite often when you've lost what you're after, you get something else that's even better. I bet you know who gave the cup, don't you?
Little blue, little blue, why do they call you little blue? Playing in his bath as some of us do, he bit his mummy's fountain pen and broke it in two. The ink it squirted in the water, wow! His mummy has a blue ball, mummy has a blue ball.